card ends up on their phone. The Amazon account is open. The Venmo, because when they were in middle school, they needed Venmo for like, their team or like whatever it is now. And then this new thing that happens as they're older is, let's go out to dinner, 6 of us, and I'll put it on the credit card and you guys Venmo me back. That's from hell. Unless it's a birthday, I put a full kibosh on that. I mean, I was like, oh, come on. That's like stealing.
Like modern day money laundering.
Okay, welcome back. This is our second round with Emily Burnett, and I keep mispronouncing the company name.
Moso.
So money.
Correct. Yes.
We did talk about that, but the bamboo and the strength of the roots and then the quick growth. But this round, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about which I found incredibly interesting, selfishly, because my kids are of that age where I'm realizing they don't really have a credit card. They are not building their credit. They're not really paying any of their own bills. I'm going to admit that. That's my own, you talk about people, in the last meeting that we had that you might have watched, we talked about how grownups have, create debt, and then there's a shame. And then lo and behold, Emily rides in and teaches them how to want to take control of their money through budgeting and patience and self love, basically, because it's hard to do if you don't like yourself. And in this case, I'm kind of in the same boat as I'm sure a lot of my friends are in teaching their kids how to manage money for their lifetime. To begin, you're handed a credit card at 18, and we hope they don't run out and do what you did. Charge a lot. But and then basically, we're going to talk about would you call it a course or a plan, basically, of how to educate parents to support their kids in a way that will create financially responsible adults.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would say it's kind of a methodology and an approach, a structured approach, because when we had this conversation on the phone last week, I can absolutely see, like, in some ways, educating your children, the next generation, about money is an even more loaded subject than just how you are with money as a person.
That's
because you don't have control over choices of the other people. And so when I work with somebody one-on-one and we are getting involved in proactive, happy money management, which involves getting out of debt, seeing a vision, creating a vision to where you want to go financially and otherwise, and then creating a system or a budget that ties it all together and makes sure you can execute on that vision. Your young adult kids are a wild card in this whole situation. But they're just
you're like, they have a little bit of a use of the card. It's on their phone. It's like, so when I was growing up, I got a credit card from my dad, American Express, and he was like, here's a card, buy a pair of socks once a month, pay it off, you write your little check, pay it off, and you'll build your credit. And I did that. And then he also gave me his credit card copy, and he's like, this is for emergencies. And this card didn't leave my house. Typically it was like in my apartment or whatever. Like in college I got it, and that was great because it's like, okay, we're gonna fly home. And there was never, the way we paid our bills in those days was really checking account. You'd send a little check in for your electric, and you'd send a check in for the rent. And then we did have bank cards then. So you'd take $5 out of the Turkey Hill, and That would actually cover you. That would buy gas. That would buy some beer and food this is like I sound like I'm a million, but my point is that I held that my dad's card was like sacrosanct. Like that sucker did not get used unless it was like, can you book your plane ticket, or like get your train home or whatever it was. Or I'll cover that, once in, something special. Now I find for me and I assume most of my friends, the card ends up on their phone. The Amazon account is open. The Venmo, because when they were in middle school, they needed Venmo for like, their team or like whatever it is now. And then this new thing that happens as they're older is, let's go out to dinner, 6 of us, and I'll put it on the credit card and you guys Venmo me back. That's from hell. Unless it's a birthday, I put a full kibosh on that. I mean, I was like, oh, come on. That's like stealing.
Like modern day money laundering.
The Venmo goes to them.
Wow, yeah.
Get the credit card bill. So it's not like that happens a lot, but it could. And I'm sure it does happen to a lot of people. That is a sneaky kid money making thing where like, they're like, we're going to get a manicure and, Venmo me back, like it's on my phone, which is really my mom's card.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West of reining in finance. And I tried to. One of my kids started like a monthly thing that I had allowed, but then they go away to college and I wanted to cancel it, the core power. And I know there are people out there relating to this, and that's why I'm doing it, because they're going to hear this and be like, oh my God. And then you get these monthly bills. Well, because they didn't cancel it when they went to college. And now I'm getting these $100, bills each. And I tried to cancel it and they're like, well, you can't because you didn't make this. Well, it's my money. It's on my card. Sorry. So core power is like, you can't cancel it. And then luckily American Express will, but if the kid starts it up again, they can.
Yeah.
Because there is some autonomy, even though it's my car. It's terrible. Anyway, so I'm just dumped my dirty laundry. I think my kids could use they're good kids, they're nice kids, but I do think they could use some financial responsibility. And the other thing you talked about going into, which I think is really important, is allowing kids to fail and allowing, like, the one thing we have really failed on as parents is, here's the $500 a month or the $350 or the $1,000 or whatever it is. That's it. That's your Uber, that's your coffee, that's your outside of your dining program if you're in college. This is all college kids, but
yeah.
So,
well, and I would say, this is actually so similar to even working individually with somebody on their money. That's just their money, or maybe household money, but there aren't young adult kids involved yet. Just like getting it all out in the open and not judging it and not trying to change anything in the past, because what's happened has happened, and like there's no like blaming yourself for what you didn't do.
Right.
It doesn't serve anything. So like I definitely recommend just like starting wherever you are and dealing with like, whatever is. Yeah.
But next time, like
yeah. And really, I think it's kind of where I start with every client is like setting the vision. And so deciding ahead of time what you even want it to look like. Like set your ideal, and you might need to look at what's been happening, like dollar amounts, to start like making peace with what is currently happening. So you like sweep all that into the open because then if like daughter 2 is spending $1,200 per month, like it gives you information.
Right.
And you can only, that will probably be the best way to make any transition with your kids, is to look at what's happening now and make a plan
Write
to
that down.
move toward, make a plan to move toward what is your vision. Because the alternative is saying we're ending the way things have been, and we're essentially cutting you off, and you now from here on out only get $500 a month or whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of like fad dieting, right?
Yeah.
It probably won't last.
Oh.
And it won't be good for the relationship, or it'll feel like a Hail Mary that. So the real way to make any lasting change is accept what is, accept what you want, decide what you want, and then like you make your plan for implementing that vision.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to kids managing money, one of the basic principles for anyone to want to manage their money is a knowledge that it's finite. And if young adults never experience the consequences of money running out, they have no incentive to manage it well.
So I think we should repeat that little thing in case my kids ever watch this. Say that again.
Well, the part about constraint, finite, yes. That like truly, if there was unlimited amounts of money, nobody would manage their money. If you could wave a wand and create it, and there was no consequences to the economy and etc. But there is a really wonderful thing that happens when money runs out, and that is, or when you know money might run out, you value things differently. You value things more, and anything you choose, you appreciate more. There was a study in, I want to say, The Paradox of Choice, which is an excellent book.
Okay.
And he talked about how they gave, I think it was actually young adults, like college students, paintings. And for a certain group, they said, this is your painting, but you can change it anytime. You can like bring it back to the art department and get a new painting if you don't like this one. I hope I'm telling this story right. And then there was another group, and they were just given a painting to say, this is your painting forever, like enjoy it. And at the end of a year, they measured satisfaction. And the ones who could always change it in were much less satisfied with it.
It's like,
and what does
Hinge?
What's that?
It's like dating apps.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. And I relate this to money, which is when you have a sense of ownership, there is a real sense of honor and investment and pride that you only get when you make something yours. And so for young adults, they're in, like in your case, your girls are in college, but they will eventually leave college. And so setting your vision for what you want, I mean, maybe you look down the road, like when they're in their 40s, how do you want to be interacting with them financially? Ooh. How much do you want them? Like, how much do you want them to rely on you for help? Yes. And if it's zero.
No, really. I mean, they shouldn't, they should definitely, anything, I think it should be like, they've got their education, and then there's everybody's different, but like, that's what holidays and birthdays and all those other, I don't know, but sorry.
Well, and I think, no, I think that's really great. And it's really great, that. I think it would just be important to use like the time between now and then, or even between now and them turning 30, to like fully offboard them financially.
Yeah.
And to determine how willing you are to let them fail, and how willing you are to let them experience financial constraints. And if they run out of money, the money you are supplementing or giving them midway through the month, how do you want to handle that? And that's nothing I can tell you. It's nothing I can tell any of your listeners, but they're the sorts of questions that are really important to decide.
Yeah.
So you can start making changes. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you, as the giver of money, to or a giver of some money
Mm-hmm.
and the access to a credit card,
Yeah.
when you decide what you want, then your young adults are ready to enjoy money management. They have no incentive to manage it if
Right.
all they have to do is ask for more money. And um, so anyway, I really do think that like helping a kid, a young adult succeed with money really involves a parent deciding what their limits are.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think that when we talked about this last week, it really it's an utterly different way of thinking about it, because we're all scrambling around like, oh, what are you giving Janie,
Mm-hmm.
per month,
Mm-hmm.
and on and on. And if they go abroad, what do they, how are you managing that? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that you're right. It's less their choice than our choice, because you're right. What's the incentive to manage your money if there's no end to it and everything is
Mm-hmm.
covered, other than the occasional, like, no, I don't want to get you that dress,
Right. Yeah.
or no, I don't want to pay for that, trip, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah.
It gives them are you familiar with I don't know where I first read this, but the analogy of like the fence at the schoolyard. And they found that if there was no fence around a schoolyard, that the kids
Mm-hmm.
tended to play closer to the school.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as they put a fence up, kids were like utilizing the full playground.
Wow.
And I feel like that is just like such a gift parents can give to their kids, is to
Mm-hmm.
determine the fence. And then they get to operate fully within it.
Mm-hmm.
And it prevents resentment on your
Yeah.
part potentially, or on their part.
Right.
If it's almost like and I don't mean this in like a heavy-handed sort of way, but like a parent getting intentional about their financial approach to their child
Yeah.
is a little bit of a new sheriff in town. Like, okay, we're going to like treat you like you're a small business and choose how much we are going to invest in the small business or fund or contribute. And then you get to choose what to do with it and how to
Mm-hmm.
maximize it. And it is just such a gift you can give to your kids and to your relationship, so that
Yeah.
there's not a feeling of, well, why did you say no to this dress, but you said yes to every other one?
Right.
Like it just,
Right.
it clarifies
Oh, it's
a
so,
lot
yeah.
of your decisions.
Yes. That's a tough one, because there just are times you're like, really? Like, why am I saying yes or no? I don't even
Yeah.
know, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And, in the same way that proactive financial management on an individual level or a happy budget gives
Happy
an
budget.
individual, I always have to use some, because budget has such a negative connotation, and I'm
But it
on a mission
shouldn't.
to
Yeah.
redefine it.
Yeah.
Because as I see it, it really is, it is the thing that gives you permission to spend, and it also gives you a healthy reason to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of one particular client whose kids would come and ask, like, can I have $10 for this? Can I have $20 for that? And she didn't have a reason to say no, except sometimes she just felt like saying no to
Right.
say no.
Yeah.
And as soon as she got really like proactive with her own money and decided how much in advance each child could access in a month, it just like, if a kid came and said, I need more, she could say, you've actually spent everything this month. And that was like, those were younger kids. With adult children, they actually have more of an opportunity to like start using a budget themselves, to say,
Right.
okay, cool, mom and dad are being so gracious and giving me X amount of money. How do
Mm-hmm.
I want to use that in advance?
Right.
So it just really like clarifies some of the
Yeah.
dynamics of the relationship
Yep.
around money and between you and your kids.
As you were saying that, it occurred to me that for those of us with kids in college right now or high school right now, or that are spending more than a little kid in the old days,
Mhm.
you go to the grocery
Mhm.
store, you'd buy all the groceries for the family, make, that's how I work, and make the dinner. And one now there's 4 grocery bills.
Yeah.
There's 3 kids and us.
Mhm.
So it's not that we're paying for all their groceries on the credit card like all the time, but theoretically it is kind of working out that way.
Mhm.
Um, but wait, I had this idea that oh, it disappeared. I had this great, I had this big thought.
Shoot.
No,
No.
but it was more, oh, I know what it was. It was that our kids were in COVID. And there were some things that as parents we anything from safety, like I had a kid in lower Manhattan, and it was like she could take the train, which was it wasn't and isn't great right now, but was in particular not, was kind of a no man's land in Lower East Side. So it was we were okay with Ubers, and that was super expensive.
Mhm.
Mainly not it was like in the old days, like we would take the subway, we didn't take cabs. Like cabs were a bit of a luxury, so Ubers have
Mhm.
kind of become what subways were to us, and I think
Mhm.
that's a problem. The only good news about that is that then kids don't drink and drive in the same way, because
Mhm.
they don't feel I, I'm trying to not just justify but explain.
Mhm.
If a kid if I tell a kid, I don't want you spending so much on Uber, that may
Mhm.
affect the way they choose
Mhm.
when to use Uber.
Mhm.
So if some kid has a car and they're going out, well, maybe they'll hop in the car because they don't want to spend their
Mhm.
Uber budget. And and a car like going out at night or something, which is probably not going to happen in New York, but at
Mhm.
other, upstate New York or whatever. It just this idea that COVID created this sort of lack of safety in our cities
Mhm.
where I live and my kids were in school at the time, and which loosened us up to the idea of, and also like a treat, like it's been
Mhm.
pretty awful for them, for a period of time. And so you'd sort of be like, all right, you know what? Sure, go ahead. Like, why don't you guys just
Yeah.
all go do whatever this, or it's finally okay. So yeah, let's celebrate. And it's a year of celebrating. It's like,
Mhm.
so I do think that COVID, for we parents of
Mm.
teens and 20 somethings have been hit with this, like, oh my God, like that my kid is remotely sane at this point is
Yeah.
great. And if it
Yeah.
costs me a little more, I'm willing to do that. But in the meantime, we've kind of, I'm looking for the word, we're kind of, ugh, basically the word not allowing our kids
Mm.
to learn to be financially responsible and independent
Mhm.
because we kind of have this tap on.
Yeah, yeah. And I see absolutely why kind of how you got where you
Yeah,
are.
right.
And that's why I think it's really important to like acknowledge it. And so maybe like acknowledge if there's a disconnect between like maybe part of you is saying we should only be giving them this much per month, but really it is this much per month
And that's what's happening.
because of it's almost like young adult COVID lifestyle creep.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
lifestyle
like,
creep, which is what happens.
yeah,
Like you hear that with like the millennial,
yeah.
yeah,
But like being okay with it and then also like setting your vision because if your daughters were 27, like at what point do you stop um funding Ubers because it's going to be the safe choice for
yeah,
them,
yeah,
and I don't have that answer and you might
no,
not right now either. But
hmm,
those are the sorts of questions that would be so important to decide ahead of time.
yeah,
And I think that could lead to some I know it could lead to some very powerful conversations with your girls
hmm,
about but again, before you have conversations with them, you kind of need to like pick um know what you really think, feel, and want
Right.
for your girls with your money.
Hmm.
And then you're set up for a great conversation with them.
And that's kind of that's where you come in, because you sort of are creating this.
Mhm.
So you've been working with the people that missed that conversation,
Mhm. Mhm.
or that opted out of
Yeah.
it and into
Yeah.
their 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s,
Mhm.
50s, have found themselves with massive student debt and lifestyle creep, which I think is,
Mhm.
I mean, God, the internet makes you think you should be doing all these things,
Right.
all the time. And the reality is, it's like, why don't we teach home ec anymore? It's like, who said
Mhm.
budget was a bad word? Budget is
Yeah.
budget. It's like, budget should be a good word, like,
Yes.
it should be, people used to joke about it. Oh, the B word,
Mhm.
B word.
Mhm.
And it's like, but
Yeah.
why is it bad? It's kind of fun. Like it's
Yeah.
like, look at what you're spending on different things. I don't do it enough, but every now and then I do. And I'm like, huh, wow, that's a big chunk, like less than I thought it was, or,
Yeah.
and I think, just for the people that are watching this or listening to this, um, that there's a different sort of financial advising, and you're not like a CFA or a CPA or
Mhm.
any of that stuff. This
Mhm.
is more about, um, it's almost the psychological side, and it's, from one person's experience and growth,
Mhm.
passing it
Mhm.
on, um,
Mhm.
because without it, there's a chance that you or your children may end up in this predicament, and maybe, it unnecessarily.
Right.
The only other thing I was gonna say, and then I'll shut up again, is um life is busy. COVID slowed us down,
Mhm.
and now we're like,
Mhm.
we're just buzzing all over the place. We're traveling, we're just busy.
Mhm.
We were busy before
Mhm.
COVID, but I think that we're so busy to take the time to talk about this stuff when you're like, oh, I only see my kids,
Mhm.
at these times now, because, they're in college, or um, like, you frankly forget about this until the bills roll in. And
Yeah.
you're like, dang it. Meanwhile, you're like, I haven't talked to my kid in a week or two. Is the first thing I'm going to say is like,
Mm.
I'm really upset. We've got to talk about the finances. So it's hard to find the time. It's hard to create the time willingly
Mhm.
to spend on this. But if you don't, the things that you were talking about really are going to keep coming back and being an issue. Like, they're 40, are you still covering their Ubers?
Yeah.
Are they pissed that you didn't buy the dress for them? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
It's one of the things that, really affects families as they work with financial planners, financial advisors, is and usually by that point they are dealing with the effects of decades of financial what becomes financial enablement.
Hmm.
And so what we're having a
Right.
conversation about
That's a
is
tough,
how do
great.
you preempt it? How do you
Mhm.
start being kind of healthy and holistic about it now?
Yeah.
And I really, how I work with the adults is setting the vision and
Mhm.
like deciding how you're going to implement it, which includes how do you want to have conversations? And it doesn't have to be like a big family serious meeting
Yeah.
or powwow, but like it really does start by the parent deciding how they want it to look.
Hmm.
And again, starting with what's really happening right now
Uh-huh.
and formalizing that before you try to drastically change it
Hmm.
and setting your strategy for how it looks over a series of couple years maybe. And then actually I'm the one that interfaces with the child, with
Yeah.
your young adult to say, I don't make the mistakes I made. Like
Yeah.
I can be a warning to you. You'll limit your options, but in order for me to have a healthy and whole conversation with your child, they have to know. how much they're getting from you and what
Right.
the plans are from their parent side. Um, and so then it really is a conversation about like with your kid, like, what do you want out of life? And like,
Right.
what are things you've done in your life that you feel super good about, that you
Right.
worked for yourself?
Right.
And managing money can be that same thing. You can get the
Yeah.
same kind of adrenaline
Yes.
by like taking good care of something.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I love that. I do think that that is to feel a sense of ownership,
Mhm.
even if they're not making a ton of money right now.
Mhm.
Their summer jobs or whatever, they're working at school, that it's theirs and it's only theirs.
Mhm.
And that mm, it's sort of like the thing of when the kids were in high school and kids would show up with incredibly expensive, like multiple incredibly expensive things that obviously their
Mhm.
parents bought. And
Mhm.
it's it's one of those things, well, it creates stress on everyone
Mhm.
else because you're like, oh God, is this the normal? Like everyone needs a can of
Ah.
goose jacket. I was like, well, that I've held firm on. I'm like, no, it's gonna get lost. And no, but it I love the idea that a kid can feel good about that, like,
Mhm.
this is what I can afford.
Mhm.
And when I see people, it's great to have birthday presents. And, I'm
Mhm.
not saying they shouldn't have nice things, but I'm just saying, like, what repeating basically what you were saying
Mhm.
is they are creating their own vision of how they want to live, and it
Yeah.
will affect the jobs that they want to get.
Mhm.
If you're cool living like way out in the country and having a really chill existence, and
Mhm.
it's affordable in that way in that area, great. Like that's
Mhm.
not a problem. But if you want to live in like New York or whatever, yeah, your income is a thing. Um,
Yes.
you can't live there. We're not we're not paying your rent, it's like because it
Mhm.
wouldn't be good for the kid.
Right. Right. And that's the
Yeah.
crux of the matter. I think about this, I like to mountain bike, and I rode this trail a lot, and there's one corner that always scared me. So I would
Mhm.
like, and it was a pretty tight one, and I ride an e-bike, and so it's a little
Ooh,
like heavier.
that's scary.
It's really
Because you
fun
go
and
really
a little
fast.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, coming down, I was approaching this corner, and that morning I was like, I'm going to take this corner today. And I did. And it sounds silly, but like as an adult, we take so few physical risks like that.
True, yeah.
And I just felt so dang good about myself. Like
Yeah.
I did it. I did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that is the feeling that I want like every individual woman to have with her money, every adult, and
Yeah.
especially every young adult, because they have a lot of life ahead of them. And they need to have that like internal sense of, I did it.
Yeah.
And allowing them, teaching them and supporting them by giving them financial constraints
Hmm.
sets them up to have those same like I did it moments.
Right. Ah, I just think that's great. And I agree. And it's one of those things we've all gotten a little lazy about. Not all, but some of us have gotten a little lazy about. And the sheriff needs to come in
Yeah.
with your help. I think
Yeah.
we're going to wrap it up. And any questions that anyone has for Emily, you can actually, well, there'll be a way to communicate with Emily on the
Yeah.
street. And yeah, you know the drill. Like it's always the same thing. But Emily, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And I'll call you after this.
Okay. Sounds so great talking. Thank you,
Take care.
Kim.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.